Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It's episode 185 of the flagship show here on the Sunday night. I'm your host tonight, Colin Armstrong. Say every week, guys, it's not just the pod that we have here at Gersnet. You know, we've got the website, match previews, forums, all that kind of thing, history archive on the website as well, so get yourself on that. We'd ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, promote the pod on social media, all that kind of stuff, put the word out there. Before I bring in my guests, I need to mention our partners. We have two partners for the pod this season. First of all, it's Forrest Precision Engineering, who are a Glasgow-based engineering company. They have been a big commercial partner of Rangers Football Club for some time. We're delighted that they're back in the pod this season, and you can find out more details about them on www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have an executive lounge at the main stand at Ibrox. Apparently it's stunning. I've seen some photos. It really is a cracking thing. So for information, if you fancy booking yourself into that for some VIP treatment at Ibrox, you can contact the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk, and they'll give you all the details. Also, I have to mention Zenith Coins, who produce the official Rangers Club coin. Each gold-plated coin has a unique serial number engraved on the rim and comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. Loads of famous Rangers fans like Alan McCoy, Derek Johnson, Marvin Andrews, Big Ton Stoltman and Gordon Ramsay are all owners of a coin collection, and they've also produced the 150th anniversary collection, which is limited to 1,872 sets. They're released in small batches. There's 5 icons of Rangers history on that. It's the Founding Fathers, Ibrox Stadium, the Cup Winners' Cup in 72, 9 in a row, and 55 league titles. You can get all the details on their website. So after that, I'll bring in my guests. It's been a while since I've seen them. It's been a long time. I'll bring in Alex Anderson first. You're sitting in the dark there, Alex.
I know. Do you know what I've done? I forgot. Remember the wee light thing I bought from the day we had the Dorothy Perkins Loyal visit to Ibrox. I got the wee emergency stand for the camera, and the wee light. I forgot that. It's in the other room. You know what I mean? And that's just to light up my face beautifully, Colin. I actually look kind of fat and bald and old in this, so I need to get that. I need to get that back on just to get me going, mate. How's yourself? I hear you having a bit of a problem with your yourself.
Got a bit of a leaky roof. I had a plumber out through the week to fix it. He'll be getting phoned tomorrow because just before we came on air, it started leaking again. So whatever it is he's done, which cost £500, he's not fixed the problem. So
you made it like a true pro. You're here anyway.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm raging. But I'm here.
Well, you're in the right mood then for talking about yesterday's performance. That's great.
Honestly, if it's no one thing, it's something else. Honestly, I'm pissed off in middle age because it's just one thing after another, if I'm being honest. Speaking of middle age, we've also got Stewart Weir on tonight. That was a nice segue into bringing you into the conversation, Stewart.
It was more cheeky than nice, I have to say. It was, but thanks for the welcome anyway. It has been a considerable while since I've seen anybody on the other end of the screens here, so looking forward to this evening.
Yeah, it'll be good. I should point out that Stuart recommended the plumber, so that's why I kind of had a go at him there. I'm joking, he didn't. Okay.
Stuart has got an in-house plumber. Me. I'm equally interested about the new sponsors, Forrest Precision Engineering, for this season. I might phone them up and see if they've got a couple of shifts going, given my track record in that particular department as well.
It's the amount of sponsors we've got. It'll just be like me mentioning the sponsors, introducing the guests, and saying, "Right, guys, see you next week." Yeah, that'll be that. Anyway, right, on to football matters. The first game of the season yesterday against Livingston at the Tony Macaroni Stadium.
I prefer spaghetti had. Can we call it spaghetti had?
Aye. Call it what you want. I just, even my wife was night shift on Friday night, so she sort of came down halfway through the game, sitting eating her breakfast. And somebody mentioned the Tony Macaroni Arena, and she's like, "Is that what that ground's called?" I was like, "Aye." She's like, "That ridiculous." And I was like, "It is. It's the most ridiculously named ground possibly ever." But I've said this before on the show. I genuinely am struggling to think of a decent game of football I've seen. Even when it just seems to be a ground that doesn't produce great games of football. Obviously, some of that's down to Livi and what they're trying to do. But, in terms of the game, didn't go off to the best of starts. I think that's fair to say. And for a long, long time, it looked like we were going to drop vital points right on day one until that sort of late comeback. So, I think we deserved the win. I think overall we were by far the better team. And obviously, by far the most possession first half. Didn't use it too well second half. I think we were more productive and cut through them a bit better. But just great to get those 2 goals later on and get the 3 points.
Aye, it was just straight back to kind of square one. You're totally getting through the ringer. But you boys did well last week. Last Sunday's show, you were talking about being at the friendly with Spurs. That's more than I've made this summer. I've still not been to see us. I had tickets for the West Ham game. I had tickets for the Tottenham game, but I might have mentioned I didn't get to Seville. I might have mentioned that before, and it kind of cut me up. Last season was absolutely mental. I might also have mentioned to everybody that's ever met me ever that I moved house last year and I turned that into a massive trauma as well. So I was just looking forward to a really good summer, but I took on some work that I couldn't get out of the way. So basically, I was absolutely knackered. I've been knackered for the whole season. I couldn't face. And see these folk like, I can't wait for the football season to start. It's like, how easily they forget what the football actually puts you through. See, if you actually care about a team, it puts you through so much. And yesterday, I actually ended up, the one thing I did find out is I'm not a jinx. Didn't go to Seville, we get beat. Did go to the cup final, we won it. And I missed the first quarter hour yesterday because I was taking the car back. We'd hired a motor to do a bit of driving down south last week. So when I came in, we were getting beat. I was like, that's good, it's not me. It's officially not me anymore. But that was about the only kind of positive I could take for it, mate. It was this whole thing of, I can't wait for the football to start. No, you just know it's going to drag you in, suck you in. You're going to go through things that you went through yesterday for that kind of first hour or so. But it was all worth it. And to me, Colin, I think, generally speaking, I think I'm being positive about it. I think we actually look like a team who've done a lot of big things last year, really recently. And it takes out, you're going to be rusty. It's a lot. You need a lot of recuperation for that. And we also look like a team who's got big things to do this season and be kind of waking yourself up, kind of lumbering beast, ready to go for everything on all fronts. And I think the first 2 games of last season in the league, we beat Livi 3-0. Quite emphatically, although there was quite a long spell in that game. We struggled a bit after Hadji get injured, and then we lost at Tannadice, and didn't play anywhere near as well as we played yesterday. Yeah. And I feel as if that was both games combined. Both the games kind of combined yesterday. We had the kind of, we're not quite going. We're going through the emotions. We're doing the things that we're supposed to do. We're kind of hitting the byline. We've got the shape and all that, but it wasn't coming to anything. We looked, really blunt for a long period in the first half. But eventually, we kind of saw them waking up, and I think a lot of new boys, and not all players as well, kind of found out the hard way that Gio no stand for any nonsense. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you will go off. And I think we've got we saw the first inklings of the kind of size of squad we've got, and this squad can actually do good things.
Yeah, Stuart. I mean, obviously the first thing you look at, you look at the starting lineup. The team coming out is probably the first thing of the day that you look at. And myself and Gary were doing a preview show on Friday night there, and we were sort of saying, the back four is settled. Based on the players who were available, you kind of had a rough idea who was going to play. You got that right. Goalkeeper was up for grabs. The front three, I think, was picking itself again based on the players that were available. But it was that midfield 3 area. It was like, well, who's he going to go with? So he's went with Lundstrom, Kamara, and Lawrence. And first things first. I think we need to discuss McGowan. Is this a sign that he's now the new number one, or are we going to the keepers? Or I saw Douglas Alexander in the Sunday Times today suggesting that it was because it was on an artificial surface that they were protecting McGregor. How do you see it? Do you think that's McLaughlin in the number one shirt now?
No, I don't. I think Dougie Alexander might have actually had a good point there that the last thing you want is unnecessary damage to the guy who might be your number one goalkeeper, especially, and he might not like it, especially at his age, because I still think he is the number one, and I think McLaughlin, decent enough goalkeeper as he is, I think is expendable when it comes to, to what Rangers are going to try and achieve this season. It might work out differently in weeks to come. I thought the goal was a collective shambles. Barisic, whether he was frightened of losing the ball in the air or being turned, he backed off far too much, or whether he was pressured or felt pressure playing alongside somebody he hadn't actually played beside. In terms of a new centre back combination with Suter playing there, who knows? But it was a bit of a catastrophe all in, and the kind of goal I would have to say that over a great many years I have witnessed on the first day of the season time and time again, where it looks as if there's actually guys who've played for a season or two together who actually look as if they hadn't been formally introduced at pre-season training.
Yeah, it's. I mean, on the starting 11, there was competitive debuts handed to Suter, Lawrence, and Cholak. I think we should focus on Suter for the moment. I don't think he had the best of days. I think it's fair to say. I saw someone suggesting on social media today that that there's been an incident in his private life recently, and I don't know how true that is, and I don't want to speculate too much in case that's not the case. I mean, there could be multiple reasons. I mean, we've seen players come before. Andy Gorham, God bless him. When he arrived at Rangers, he never really got off to the best. But yesterday, I think he struggled a wee bit against Spurs as well. But I will say that Suter is, or any Rangers player who comes in and has, because I think it's fair to say a bad day, it's too early to write them off. You know what I mean? I think we've seen in the cup final, and we've seen last season that the boy's a good player. So I think it's I have seen some stuff on social media going down that road, criticising he's not good enough, all that kind of thing. Early days yet, I think.
Aye, the first and foremost reason being presented by a lot of pundits, and what have you, Colin, was that he was used to playing in a 3 on the right hand side at Hearts last season. Then he's on the left hand side in a 4-man defence yesterday, so he's not used to it. I think also we'll talk about the big fella that scored the goal for Livingston. It reminds me very much of, if you're looking for examples of why we shouldn't be panicking, Hollander, his first time in the very same park, it was against Lyndon Dykes, and I think Davy Martindale's got his Lyndon Dykes again. I have forgotten that fella's name. He scored a goal against us. He was man of the match, and I still can't remember.
Joel Noble.
Not that I'm biased, not that I'm bigoted or anything. I can't remember anybody who scores against Rangers' name. But we saw that night. It was a League Cup game 2 seasons ago. Hollander getting schooled on the park at the end of the game by Stephen Gerrard as to how to deal with Dykes, how to go for the ball and that. And Hollander turned into, when he's fit, one of the best defenders we've ever seen. He's a class act, Hollander. With me, it was Mark Hateley. Mark Hateley was always the go-to, the Mark Hateley rationale. Guy that had a terrible start and ends up being an absolute legend. I think Bassey's overtaken that now. I think Bassey will be the guy forevermore that we refer to when it comes to why you shouldn't write anybody off.
Even McCoist. Struggled. McCoy struggled for a number of years. You know what I mean? It wasn't just the first 3 months.
That feeds into what I'm actually saying about it's the whole thing about fine wines and what have you. I don't actually panic if Rangers start a bit slow. I know the way the league's going these days, the way it's been for the last 20 years. If you drop points, you can only drop a certain amount of points. I know, but you want to hit the ground running. But I think as much for the new signings as for the team itself, I don't panic when it's a bad start, because you almost feel that could be a sign of, there's a lot of quality there, and it's just real quality sometimes takes a while to gel. It never. Sometimes guys that hit the ground. I mean, I remember the day I think Stephen Miller, the Rangers Archives fella, posted recently, past few days on Twitter, when we beat Motherwell at Fir Park under Paul Le Guen in his first league game.
Yeah,
and we looked like, and I think we only won the game by one goal, but we looked like we were playing football for a different dimension. We looked absolutely amazing. We ended up looking like we were playing football for a different dimension later on in the season, but in a bad way. But I think we shouldn't panic at big fella. I saw the same rumours being bandied about on Twitter that you're talking about, and I think settling into Rangers, I think maybe if you're coming for another Scottish club, it might even be harder. But Big Souttar, he's shown his quality. Particularly, I think even when he was in Jackie McNamara's kind of exciting young Dundee United team that beat us in the Scottish Cup semi-final at Ibrox back in 2014. They had all the Ryan Gould and all the kind of players in. Stuart Armstrong and what have you. He was quite an exciting forward-going defender, Souttar. So I don't think we'll even see him maybe in his settled position. And I certainly wouldn't be judging him. It's a hell of a place to start your Rangers career as Livi away, but nobody's writing him off. But I get Ben Davies as fit as possible, quickly as possible.
You're just going to. You're going to be facing the howitzer shells coming in on top of you. Basically Livingston line up as if they're on a war footing, but they're playing to their strengths. And the point, Colin, that you made there, and Alex, the point that you made about, respectively, about Gorham and McCoist. Everybody thinks, McCoist scored after 33 seconds against Celtic. McCoist was threatened by Jock Wallace by a loan deal going to Cardiff ahead of the League Cup final, which was the making of McCoist. You could name a Rangers Legends 11, and out of that team, not one made a decent debut or a decent start to their career. Brian Laudrup, Rangers lost 3-0 in aggregate to AEK Athens. That's hardly an auspicious start. So, a guy playing on an artificial surface, maybe in an artificial position as well, having seen the onus put on him in terms of the defence, with what Barisic had done as well, listen, I'm willing to cut the guy a bit of slack.
In terms of the other two that started yesterday, Stuart Lawrence and Cholak, never really seen much from him. I mean, in Cholak's case, I think you can look at, I think Rangers had over 40 crosses or something yesterday, but I think the quality of them wasn't particularly good, especially in the first half.
But it's where the crosses go, though, isn't it? I mean, if we're old enough to remember the likes of Tommy McLean and Davy Cooper and Willie Johnson and, umpteen other guys basically putting it on the centre forward's head. I mean, yesterday it was like one of those kind of place the ball competitions you used to do in Littlewoods, marking crosses all over the television, wondering where the ball was going to go next. He didn't have an easy time of it. And I thought he was isolated at times. I thought Lawrence get into some decent positions, much the same as Scott Wright, but I wasn't quite sure what one of the two was actually trying to play through the middle at times, and what one was maybe even joining up with Cholak as a secondary striker. And I don't think that looked as if it had actually been explained to one or two of the players on the pitch either. They looked quite disjointed, and it took until half time and into the second half until one or two amendments were made, one or two changes were made to the 11 that Rangers eventually came good.
I mean, we really did. I mean, after that opening goal, Borna doesn't cover himself in glory, and I think there's maybe a conversation to be had about Borna in terms of, is it maybe time that we move him on? Obviously, Souttar's not covering himself in glory, but it was early on in the game. First 5 minutes, you think, right, okay, if you're going to concede, that's probably the best time to do it as early on as possible, and it gives you plenty of time to recover. But it was really, really concerning the way it felt like a story and a picture we'd all watched a million times before. Loads of possession, side to side, and no real sort of cutting edge. And with the threat of them, Golson got a book in that. Newell did in the first half. He caused us a few problems on the break. I think they got a booking out of Kamara and a booking out of Goldson. So it did feel like, because through the summer and the business that we've all done, I was feeling really positive, thinking, yeah, we've finally got a bit of strength and depth. We've added to the areas we need to add to. And then, 45 minutes, I'm like, this is just the same movie we've seen 100 times before. How could this happen?
I know, and I think a stat that get mentioned as soon as Livingston took the lead was at Rangers. The last time we lost the opening league game of the season was 1998-99, and we won the treble. That season. I'm not trying to set it up that we'll only win the treble if we get beaten the first game of the season. But I had a part of me that, as I've said before, was kind of like, all right, maybe we're just rusty. This is everybody's gelling together. And I think it's a hell of a test. Your first game is that most awkward of Scottish fixtures. We've started at Pittodrie as well. Gerard's first game in charge. His first league game in charge was up at Pittodrie, and we're down to 10 men and conceding. Bruce Anderson came on yesterday, and I'm thinking about that game as well. But I think we came through it, and I think when you've got like three, McLaughlin is a new player, obviously, but it's a big moment for him, maybe starting the first league game of the season, as we're saying. But I think when you've also got three new signings, you can allow for a bit of kind of slow start. But as you say, there's so many players there. Because the three guys who scored for us in that great night against Leipzig at Ibrox were on the park yesterday. You're just looking for that a bit more. You're looking for there's enough players there that have been through the motions and know what's happening. As I always say, we've got plastic pitches up at Mulgai, up at Auchenhowie. Just throw some rubber pellets all over one of them, and there's no way we shouldn't know what we're going into when we go to Livingston.
The parts at Auchenhowie are lined correctly. Goal lines that are 3 foot thick and stuff like that. But that's
I know that's
and they water them every now and again to make sure that they're sticky. But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But on Barisic, I think we all talk about Born as a confidence player, and I think the young fella arriving from Turkey, arriving today. Some players respond to a challenge. If there's a guy who's going to kind of melt under the weight of a challenge, unfortunately, we're thinking maybe it's Borna. Sorry. But look at the game he had against Celtic at Parkhead. It took him a while to recover for that, but he ends up, he's playing the Europa League final. I was reminded yesterday of the game against Hibs the season before last, the season 155. We drew 2 each, and the 2 goals we lost were aberrations. Goals Rangers lose are always aberrations as far as we're concerned, but they were bad. And it was the 2 goals. There was a bounce. There's a sweet spot for the opposition, a weak spot for Rangers that you can hit. We did the same against St Johnstone at McDermott, our first game last season. Same thing. Tav scoring a wonder goal. We come back from 1-0 down to win 2-1. There's a bit where you can just hit the Rangers defence where the ball can take a bounce, or have a guy totally isolated who can flick it on like yesterday, and it seems to be out towards Borna. That game against Hibs a couple of years ago, it was kind of like, I think it was him and Hollander didn't know where to go, didn't know what one was to go and cover it, and what one was to kind of what was to attack the ball, what was to sweep up. And yesterday, I think you also saw between Lundstrom had a man closer to him than the fella that got the flick on, but it almost looked like Bornas thought, right, I'll let you go. I'll let Lundstrom cover that. But he's not covered. He did the same at Ross County last season as well. That night we were at Ross County. I know he was blaming Alan McGregor. But Borna Barisic was nowhere to be seen. And when he actually came into the camera, as the ball was going to the back of the net, where players are falling to their knees, Borna suddenly appears kind of like for stage right and starts like, where were you? Where were you when we needed somebody to clear the ball off the line? Yeah. He just has a tendency to wander and to leave somebody really isolated. So I don't know if he's thinking he's going elsewhere or whatever, or it's just Borna has this in his game. But you're still looking for Suter for that class of centre half to deal with the big fella better once he gets the flick on. But Colin, the main thing for me is we came round, we turned it around, and we kept going at it. Cholach, I'm asking you guys, I'm interested to talk to other Rangers fans and find out. See the thing that he's not getting the touch because he's refusing to come out the box. He's always available. The cross is only coming in. I'm trying to make up my mind. Is that better in terms of holding the shape than when Alfie does that thing where he gets bored because he's not getting the service and he starts coming out and coming deep? And a lot of the times he's then not there for the crosses he's helping make. Is it better having him staying in the box even though he's not getting any service? And eventually, he should have had a goal in the second half as well. Eventually it works and the rest of the team plays. Or is it, do we want him to come deeper to get a touch? I don't think so.
But a striker who plays in that position ultimately is only as good as the support he gets, either with the balls that are getting played into him or the guys that are actually running from midfield. And that's where I thought there was, Cholach, Lawrence and Wright. There was nobody in support of the other guy. So if Cholach did get the ball and held it up, there wasn't anybody running from midfield into that kind of space. That might come through time. I will remember with Thomas Buffel and Purzo, and Alex McLeish explaining how Rangers would play with these two guys. It never quite worked out. Saying that, he was trying to compare Purzo with John Carew, and was trying to compare Buffel with how it was playing in midfield for Valencia at the time, and it didn't quite gel or quite knit. If it does come off, you need the guy who's playing in centre attacking midfield to be buzzing right onto the shoulder or down the sides of where your striker is, either for the ball to get flicked on or for him to hold the ball up and lay it off. And that just didn't happen yesterday. And again, it might be too easy to say that it's because it was the first day of the season and they're real used to playing, even blaming the pitch. I think it was a number of factors. It just didn't click, but it did click ultimately when Tillman came on, and I think he looked a more complete player than anybody else that Rangers tried in those two positions during the first half, especially.
I just quickly say, Colin, that's me. Sorry, mate. I'll shut up after this. But on that is the thing. Is we Wright, Scott Wright. I wasn't sure. There was a lot of talk about it. Did it get taken off because he was getting kicked left, right, and centre? He was injured, or was it a tactical thing? Because to me, watching the game, naively as I was in the first half, Scott isn't getting a touch. Scott Wright is getting touches, and he should have brought a red card out of Canker. He seemed to get something, but I think it got talked about at half time in Sky, how he was kept passing inside. He was then cutting back inside most of the time. And I'm wondering, so he gets replaced. It was actually tactically because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. So you get a situation where Scott Wright, to the kind of, an amateur like myself, looks like he's really busy and he's getting lots of the ball and he's dribbling past Livingston players, which is what we want. Cholach isn't getting a touch, but Cholach is sticking to what he's been told to do, and Scott Wright isn't doing his bit. And that's quite encouraging, actually, I think.
But it's down to distance between them. If you're 30 yards away, you've then got to take possession and run towards the striker. If you're almost like playing 10 yards off the striker, far easier to find. And I thought Tillman filled that void that Rangers had to manage to fill in the first half.
Sorry, you were breaking up a wee bit there, guys. Stuart, sorry, on Cancar, the Don Robertson thing where he didn't produce the second yellow card. Now, I have to say, I'm not someone that's always looking for players to get sent off. I always want both teams, after that mob, obviously, to finish with 11 men. I think, especially early on in a game, sometimes it can ruin a game. But I mean, I don't think we can doubt the first yellow. I mean, that's a definite yellow. And the second one looked a stick on for me as well. I mean, he's made no attempt to play the ball. To me, it was just a kick. He's just kicked Scott Wright. And how Robertson decided not to send him off, I find it staggering.
If you take those two as isolated incidents, they are both bookings.
Yeah. If
you basically piece them together as Don Robertson managed to do yesterday, where one was a booking and the other was a warning, then you're basically refereeing by numbers. You either have to have the consistency and also have a bit of bottle about your decision making, and see it through. Otherwise, you're going to let people down, and ultimately these things come back and bite you, because what happens is you don't get a decision in the first half, or the opposition get a decision in the first half, and then it's levelled up later on. And it's just for me it typified the level of officialdom in Scotland yesterday. The call for Cholach as well, when the linesman's looking right along And, and if you can't see somebody, it's because somebody else is level with them. Mm-hmm. And if you don't see these kind of things or make those kind of judgment calls, it honestly makes you wonder, how bad do you need to be not to get a game in the top flight in Scottish football? As for the width of the lines, I won't hear anything of it. Listen, we all remember Graham Souness and narrowing the pitch against Dynamo Kiev by about 150 yards when they were literally playing down a cricket pitch. Yeah,
but he narrowed it to the minimum that it was allowed to narrow it. The lines at Livi are, what was it they said yesterday, 4-5 centimetres?
Aye.
And like on a serious note, it is quite funny, but on a serious note, if VAR was in effect tomorrow and you had a sort of dodgy decision, was the ball over the line, was the ball not over the line, and it's had to go to the goal line technology or VAR or whatever, those 4 centimetres could make a difference between a goal and not a goal.
The thing that concerned me yesterday in the decision making was that if Scottish football has VAR introduced, is like how long games, it'll be like American football. We'll all be buying Jeeps and Range Rovers for picnics outside the grounds because we'll be there for 3.5 hours. There'll be that many reviews of the most basic of decisions. VAR is going to come into Scottish football and everybody's going, oh, it's great, we're finally caught up.
I'm not.
But you can still have clowns, absolute clowns, actually looking at the pictures and try to decipher what they're actually seeing. I don't think this is a fix. In fact, honestly, I can see the headlines already that there's got to be decisions being made, even with VAR and even with the cost of VAR, that are still going to be dubious or just downright wrong.
Well, my argument with VAR has always been the technology is only as good as the people that are using it. And I think you have to look at the absolute shambles that's happened down the road. Okay, it has improved. It's got better. They've ironed out some of the kinks. But every week on Match of the Day, they're talking about some decision or another. But it's just an absolute farce. So, and I just don't think we're mature enough up here for VAR. If anything, I think it's going to make it worse. I think the controversy will increase. But
why the hell did John Logie Baird even invent television for us? Seriously, I mean that he's a problem. He's a problem.
Yeah,
Canada can have him now. I'm finished with him.
Stuart mentioned him early on. Malik Tillman when he came on, and he seemed to make the difference. He seemed to link things up a lot better. And I think within 2 or 3 minutes in the first half, he had a first shot on target. He should have scored, to be fair, that one when Borner's hit the sort of bar and post and it's came back out. There was one angle sort of from behind where you saw the area he had to hit it at. I mean, initially I thought it was a great save, but I think, he's pretty much just hit it straight at the keeper. But that aside, I thought he played very well and as I said, linked to play up and you felt when he came on that we were starting to do things with possession, we were starting to cut them open, we were starting to create chances and it all right, it was a bit late in the game, but it did feel like we were in far better form than we were in the first half.
As we were saying just before we come on earlier, Stuart was talking about how Ryan Kent gets a lot of abuse, but the one thing Ryan Kent never does is stop trying. And he seemed to have a really poor first half yesterday, but that's because Livingston, when they're energised, and they've got the early goal to make them even more kind of energised, they're doing that thing of doubling down on Ryan Kent. And I'm always asking, if that's great, you need that. If somebody's got to double down on Ryan Kent, well, then why are we not exploiting it? And the gap left by the extra player they have to put on Ryan Kent. And I think when Tillman came on, that was it. It just started. I also think they probably had a rocket up them for Gio at half time, just tell them to get their finger out generally. But we generally we just kept going at it in the first half. But then I think in the second half, Tillman comes on, makes a difference in terms of the overall pace, the overall energy. And he just joined the club, the same club as Kent and all that, where he looks absolutely magnificent until he's in front of goal, And so we're going to be doing the same thing all season. It's got, I thought, 83% possession, and we managed 2 goals. That sounds a bit standard. So we'll do that thing, hopefully, where we get to the final of everything and take the league to the last day of the season by scoring the minimum number of goals possible, so we could have heart attacks as well. But no, I thought he made a real difference, Colin. I was really encouraged by him. It also freed up Lawrence, I think, to do more of his kind of thing as well. He looked like he was suddenly having a bit more impact on the game. And I think there was a wee bit where we're just starting to put the pressure on. There were so many incidents in the second half. I don't know, it was just after we scored the goal that was disallowed for God knows why, or just after when Borna hit the post and then the bar and the ball came back and it led to Tillman having that shot. But there was a bit where the ball kind of went out to the right, and Lawrence, who was pushed more over there now, he just stops the guy. He stops Livingston even clearing it. He kind of keeps the ball, makes a tackle, an attacker tackle deep in their half, just outside their box. And the crowd, you could hear the crowd just really picking up, the Rangers support picking up. Really encouraged by it, and it just felt like we're going to squash them. Now you're still worried it's one of those days. Good goal disallowed. Guy doesn't get sent off for Livingston. We're hitting the bar, we're hitting the post, we're missing a sitter. Is it one of the days? But I love the fact that we just kept going, and as soon as Ryan Kent got that space, he's putting the ball on Cholak's head. He puts the ball on Scotty Arfield's head for the equaliser with the right foot. Never mind the left. It just gave us that bit of freedom where we just. I don't mind. This teams want to sit in and do what they got to do. Livingston, their resources, it's the madness of the Scottish League, the financial disparity. Teams have got to do that if they want to make a game of it. And Rangers have been on the other side of that in Europe at times. We're quite happy to go and defend like mad because that's all we can do against teams with bigger budgets than us. But as long as we keep plugging away, we looked like we started bored and got more and more interested in what I'm doing, which is the opposite of what we used to do a lot of times at places like Livingston. It was like, this isn't working. All right, pass it from side to side, run out of ideas. It was like we kept going, we had faith in what we were doing, and the spaces started appearing, and we took advantage of that. And that's the thing I find most encouraging. And you brought on a new signing to do that, which is always really encouraging for the whole season ahead.
I thought the slightly ironic part was, and everything that was said there in terms of Tillman and Lawrence and Wright, it was Arfield that actually got in the position of making a run from deep to get in it in the front post and get the header and tuck it away. Ideally you're looking for one of the kind of new guys or one of the other guys to be doing that, no waiting for somebody like Scott Arfield to come off the bench and celebrate yet another extension to his contract by getting the equaliser.
I thought it's funny. Goldson did a thing in the first half. Sorry, Cop. In the first half, when we're getting beat 1-0, Conor Goldson's actually hitting the byline and cuts the ball across the goal. And I see him, and the defender almost kind of put it in his own net. It was a dodgy clearance for the corner. But you saw in the pictures, Goldson says to Cholak, "You've got to get across him." Cholak's applauding the cross, and he didn't quite make it there. And Goldson's saying, "No, you've got to get in front of him." And it's I think it's really telling that Scott Arfield, who knows the score and for some reason seems to hate his hometown, just.
Have you ever been in Livingston?
It made it look really easy.
You would
really
hate it as well.
So I think it's the roundabouts. Just like,
well, actually, when I was doing my bit of the Rangers News, when I was at the Rangers News for a couple of years, I got given a wee gig to do by Lindsay Hare, and when we signed Frank de Boer. And he phoned me and says, "Oh, we've signed Frank de Boer this morning. He's playing at Livi tonight. You've got accreditation, go over and see what you think, blah, blah, blah." I missed the whole first half because it was just roundabouts. I just could not get to that fucking ground. I was going off my nut with it, honestly. So I'll give you one of it. Scott Arfield hates his hometown. I really do.
I'll give you one about the De Boers. I know somebody who was doing a pre-season trip and happened to bump into De Boer at a wedding and interviewed him, and then once he'd done the interview and lost sight of him, wasn't sure whether he'd actually interviewed Frank or Ronald.
There you go.
That is absolute gospel truth. I wouldn't name names, but just to
you have to name names, sure.
No. I managed. I was threatened. Somebody threatened that in a court of law once, and I didn't buy it either. It's a secret that's safe with me.
Okay, In terms of Arfield, that's who I was going to come on to Arfield, actually, Stuart. I saw Twitter reacting the minute, Gio was bringing on Sands and Arfield. Somebody was like, if he thinks this is the two guys that are going to save the day, then, you know what I mean? And I was reading it thinking, when are we going to learn? Because it's happened so often now with Gio. He knows the subs to make. And actually, when you looked at the bench, there wasn't a huge amount of options in terms of changing it up front. The way I looked at it, it was giving you an extra goal threat. You're taking Kamara off, putting Arfield on, which is an extra goal threat. And you're taking Suter off, who's having a bit of a bad day, and putting on Sands. And that just, to me, that killed the threat at that point of them getting the second goal, because there was that point in the second half when Suter sort of got tangled up again and Goldson had to sort of bail him out. I felt when Sands came on, it just absolutely killed any sort of counter-attack sort of chances for Livingston. And so it's all about us. And then you've got that extra goal threat. And now I'm really sad that I was sad when Ross left the pod, but I'm really sad today because he hates Scott Arfield, and I love the guy. To me, if you don't get what Scott Arfield brings to Rangers, then I can't help you. But
here in the wings, a live link. Here he goes. Here's Ross. Ross is joining us. Ross, what do you have to say for yourself and your fans?
Aye, he'll be hiding. That's what he'll be doing. But I mean, you have to give Arfield credit. A lot of people were giving him, not giving him stick, but questioning the extension and blah blah blah. And I think he just showed you yesterday exactly what he gives you.
Aye, absolutely. We can still email and Twitter Ross. Anyway, we can still get in touch with him. I'm just hoping that Scott Arfield does move on for us. He signs for Tunbridge Angels. And Ross is going to be in the front page of the Tunbridge Gazette, welcoming him with open arms. Man charged with restraining order. It's actually a really difficult thing to do that. You made it look so easy, but you're running in one direction, heading the ball in the other direction. Exact opposite. It's a beautiful backwards header. And that's fifth time he scored against Livingston. I think 3 of them have been winners as well, or winners, equalisers. He even scored against Villarreal, equalised against Villarreal, our first game in the group stages of Europe for so many years. And I think that was just because they were a kind of Livi type strip thing. It's just like, fuck it, you can have it as well. Scored in both our Scottish Cup, scored in both our semi-final appearances at Hampden last season, saved us in the Old Firm semi-final. So I don't know how anybody can have a problem with Scotty Arfield. He's just a guy who totally gets it. And I think the one thing I always remember is last season, you saw the bit of footage where Sands was arriving. He was getting introduced to everybody. And he's like in the corridor at Auchenhowie. And Scotty Arfield just walks up to him and goes, USA, don't forget about Canada as well. It's absolutely brilliant. And you'd him, and also, I'm gutted Balogun's left, because Balogun was going up to the guy and doing the super sincere kind of, I know he plays for Nigeria, but he's half German as well, Balogun. He's in the German kind of philosophical, nice to meet you, my friend. Now you'll settle in here comfortably. And Scotty Arfield's like, by the way, USA, get up, he's Canada's number one. So I think he's just a guy who will help all these players settle in as well, as much as anything else. But I think he's still got a massive, massive contribution to make on the park.
Just what the two of you are saying there, I mean, you cannot say you need strength and depth in the squad and have somebody that you can sign for the next year like Scott Arfield and just let him disappear out the door. That was some of the chaotic management that we've seen in the past at Ibrox, where there's guys that suddenly leave Rangers and then go on and play for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years elsewhere. Yeah. I'm not saying Scott Arfield's going to do it, but he's as well filling a gap either on the bench or as a substitute or whatever in terms of the squad than just allowing it to drift out the door, because the guy knows what he's doing, and also he can work to instructions. He can play a number of different roles and play them well. And again, you either augment the squad or you just start from scratch again and play the guessing game. And just go back to Sands there. I mean, I quite like the look of Sands when he was playing in the States. I said on here, I wasn't sure whether he was a kind of defensive midfield player or a centre-back. There's a bit about him and how he plays the game, and I would not compare like here. There's a bit about him that puts me in mind of Declan Rice, because Declan Rice can actually play that far back. He looks like as if he's a third defender sort of type thing. But equally, he's a rangy enough guy to get forward. And I think yesterday we saw with some of the passes he hit as well. I mean, the switches of play, and you could see that's why he was there. That's why Van Bronckhorst made that kind of switch, because he knew the capabilities of that guy either to close the game down or indeed to open the game up by pinging diagonal balls and changing the emphasis in where Rangers were attacking.
And Stuart, last thing on today's game, I think Martindale summed it up the best way possible. Tav does what Tav does.
I thought the goalkeeper was at fault, and I put on Twitter a still of just before the free kick was taken. I thought the goalkeeper lined up. He was trying to cover both sides of the goal when actually he had a 4-man wall to the right, which means they should be covering that bit, which leaves him with a clear view of where the shot is. So if they take the shot and it disappears, he knows he's going to his left. If it goes a direct shot, which is it's got to be some shot to beat him, in sort of line of sight, then he knows that's going to his side. And I thought he gambled, and just before Tav hits it, the goalkeeper takes a big step to his right, which means he's coming off his wrong foot and having to go right across the goals. And you do not give somebody with the accuracy or the power of James Tavernier that opportunity. There was a bit about that goal, different game, different context, and all the rest of it. There was a bit about that goal that reminded me of Davy Cooper against Australia in a World Cup qualifier when Terry Greedy was a goalkeeper, and Davy Cooper looked at it and actually looked at it again to make sure that, am I seeing this right? He's left a gap there. I can't see the goalkeeper, and he's left a gap. Ping, and it went. And if you actually watch the sort of rerun of that goal, you actually see Tavernier going and looking around the side of the wall and lining up his own two players who basically moved, and he knows exactly where that's going, because he has to go around the side of the wall to see where the goalkeeper is, and that should never have happened.
But is there no part of that, Stuart, the fact that maybe the goalkeeper's thinking, well, Tav's so good at free kicks, if he gets it over the wall on that side, I've got too much to cover on that?
No, because that's why you positioned your wall on that side. You positioned the wall on that side for them to make the block or get high enough to try and cut out the free kick if it goes near post. If it's going far post, you should have a clear line of sight of where that's coming in. I said on Twitter yesterday, I could say that on Twitter, or I could say that, tonight. I don't have Andy Gorham, sadly, texting me, shouting or saying, "Shut up, wank," because that's what he would. I know what he would say. What do you know about it? But ultimately, I think somebody messaged me last night, another goalkeeper, and said, "You're absolutely spot on. The goalkeeper makes it easy for Tav, and somebody with his prowess and his shooting ability is not going to pass up on that." Ultimately, it's still a great finish and a great goal, because you need to have the confidence, and you also need to have the wherewithal to back yourself, especially that late on in the game. That's your chance. It's like a short corner at hockey. That is your chance to score a goal, and it was as good as a penalty ultimately the way he took it.
Moving on to matters off the park, and to sort of surprise announcement a couple of weeks ago. We've not spoken about this yet. From BBC Scotland, that they issued an apology to Rangers, which I think shocked us all. I don't think any has seen it coming. And they said they would start covering Rangers games again. Rangers issued a counter sort of statement on Twitter saying they accept the apology. They accept, I think Michael Stewart had made an apology as well. So I just wanted to sort of get your views on it, because one, I was surprised, and two, kind of thinking, well, that's good. It was a bit of a pain. I don't think it reflected well on both, although I think the majority of the blame in this lies with BBC Scotland. But three, I'm still a bit suspicious of BBC Scotland, and I'm a bit wary about how the reporting's going to be from here on in. part of me thinks, well, wait a minute, they're in the doors again. They're saying they're coming in. They could just continue the way they've been doing over the last few years. The only difference being is that they're coming in the front door now.
Aye. It's a difficult one, and we've only got limited time, Colin. But it means a lot to me. I don't mean it straightforwardly. It's great that we're back in speaking terms with the BBC. It goes back to 2012 and how everything changed for me and for a lot of us at that time. I was always very vocally, don't behave like we're separated brethren across the city. Don't be going in the huff with anybody. Taking the brick back, it's not getting a bit of slag in, because you're there to be slagged. It's like yesterday the fella that scored the goal for Livingston winning the man of the match. When we've had 80% possession. That's all about Rangers beating Livingston isn't a story. So anything that threatens to go against that story will get better exposure. We've seen this happen, all through the years. Like Rangers beating Falkirk in the 2009 Scottish Cup final and getting. Eventually, a boy was telling me how we were lucky, and it's like, no, we weren't lucky. We played just after the park. We just weren't as good as Rangers should be, and Falkirk played a lot better than they did. And I think you get a lot of that. It's the relentlessness usually of Rangers and Celtic winning isn't very interesting. So you'll look for another story. But I used to just be quite happy to take the slagging, but it really got malicious. Don't get it wrong. We need to remember the BBC. The BBC Scotland did the whole thing about Craig White exposing him, and we had Rangers fans doing it. Pacific Key kind of protesting about that. No, not very many, but it was, it's not always been bad, but and if I'm noticing it is bad, it became ludicrous, the kind of the digs that we're having at us, and when I think this is a big political victory in terms of, I don't think BBC have the influence, BBC Scotland, the influence they used to have when it comes to broadcasting. And I think Rangers have won this. If there can be a winner, Rangers have won this in that us getting 55, getting to the Europa League final, absolutely massive stories. And they've had to kind of be on the outside looking in. I think it's their success. It's brought them back, apologising. But I mean, Sky and other platforms are kind of kicking their ass just now anyway. And I don't think Sportscene's a very good programme anymore. Not just because of the kind of any anti-Rangers bias, true or false. I think it's just a really kind of poor programme. And I think we saw wee examples last night. No coverage, no discussion whatsoever of the Cholak's goal that was disallowed. And Michael Stewart being snippy and all that. That's fine. That's what Rangers. That's what Rangers are there. But when your team's not getting talked about, you're in trouble. And I'm always careful of overreacting to somebody who's been a bit snide or whatever. We should be big enough to take that. But when we go back to the thing about McCoy, some of the stuff they did through the years was pretty low. I don't listen to Sports Sound anymore. And yeah. I'm somebody who purposely will try and know my enemy, so to speak. Even I used to love Sports Sound. I'd be listening off the ball and what have you, even though they're slagging Rangers rotten. I'll try and take it and try and be mature about it, because there has to be a way forward with people. I'm not into this like we have to hate everybody who isn't 100% pro Rangers. I think it's a dangerous way. The world's going like that in general. We have to even in football we could do something about that, but. Yeah, some of this stuff was just getting really malicious. When they're not even, when reporting Scotland has hardly mentioned the fact a Scottish club was in a European final. Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah,
and I really separate BBC Scotland from the BBC in general, because I love the BBC as in general. Even though it's a hell of a time over the years, I think it's something that's needed, and it really, really went against my argument. This stuff that was happening with sports scene and with the fallout with Rangers, but I'm glad it's been resolved. But I think there's still going to be a lot of snidiness and what have you. It just depends what level it goes to. If it becomes something that's kind of, put it this way, we have seen a league title decided in the boardroom, and last season when Celtic and a few other clubs obviously, but when Celtic kind of basically we were knocked out. The season wasn't played to the schedule it was meant to be played to, and it really, I think it ultimately did cost us the league. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe we're to blame for that as well. But I think that was a massive moment, and there was no. I did listen to Sports Sound at that point. I remember Richard Gordon going, "Everybody knows it's because we want to wait to get. We've got to get fans back into the ground." There was a kind of dismissiveness about Rangers' kind of problem with this happening, and I think now. With so much of football kind of decided politically, it works out well for us to have the BBC, not on side, but have them back in our room as well.
Sure. I mean, Eric described it as a victory for Rangers there. Would you agree with that?
I think that, well, I have to say I've been privy to a number of parts of various discussions over a few years now, and kind of know the inside track on one or two things. And this was a long time in coming. Two rather substantial points that I'll make. The apology when it came from the BBC, who'd actually locked themselves out of Ibrox, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And they apologised for their behaviour. Therefore, to my mind, and a certain QC that I know, that is basically an admission of guilt. The other thing that probably nobody saw or not everybody was aware of was that last season Rangers reached the Europa League final, and questions were asked from Salford and Manchester as to why a team like Rangers reaching a European final was not being covered or catered for by the local broadcaster. I don't think that, for me, there's no surprise that all of this has come to a head this summer after Rangers reached a European final and suddenly an apology coming from the BBC. I think you can join the dots up there and basically tell that there'll be one or two people put under a bit of pressure for that. Listen, you're always going to get criticism. I covered Rangers for the best part of 10 years non-stop and had a few fallouts with Rangers myself, and told a few times not to bother coming back, be that from Walter Smith or especially Archie Knox, and you get on with it because it's your job to be, you can't just keep heaping praise on teams. You have to be critical at times, and I think some people can take that and other people can't take that kind of criticism. The fact of the matter is that if there is any kind of criticism or snidiness or anything like that now, you can spot it. It's not because anything I would say that Rangers are doing or Rangers have done. It's being directed for a purpose or for a reason, and you just have to get on with it. I always say in these matters, you rise above these things, because ultimately, if you do, you'll take the moral high ground.
You were saying that it was linked to the Europa League final. Any sort of suspicion that it's maybe linked to a certain Mr. Richard Gordon leaving the BBC?
No, but no, I think given who I had dinner with a couple of weeks back, and various conversations around that, I think it was way above a great many people, either at BBC Scotland or in individual programmes. So it was from on high.
Right, I'll give you the sort of last shout. It'll just need to be a quick sort of summary, but big game on Tuesday night over to Belgium to play Union Saint-Gilloise, or Gilloise, have I pronounced that properly?
I think it's Union Saint-Gilloise. I think it's
Gilloise.
As it looks, yeah. But I think they just call them USG, which is quite good.
USG, okay, doke. So, I mean, huge game. I was trying to look at the press kit on the UEFA website today, but I couldn't find anything. Don't really know a huge amount about this team, but I do get the feeling it's not going to be as easy a fixture as maybe some think it's going to be.
I'm really glad that you've only got a wee amount of time, and also that they are total money ball. They have kind of low profile players, so I can get away with the fact that I know nothing about any of their players. I've done no research into their actual team. Patrick Caskey, read his Twitter account. He's got a total analysis from a few weeks back of the actual players. But the thing is, Colin, that it's a kind of money ball scenario. I've put up my Twitter page, not because I'm looking for Twitter followers, but just to give credit when it's due, because I think the website it's a YouTube channel, HITC7s, quite a weird name. So I put it up on my Twitter account just for folk to see. They did a great review of Union Saint-Gilloise, their history, and more to the point, what they were doing. I think it was at the halfway point last season. They nearly won the Belgian league. They were top of the Belgian league in their first season back for 50 years. They're a kind of, they're nicknamed Le Unionists, which, great, Rangers, but their fans are nicknamed as Le Boys with the H. You know, they're a bit kind of trendy, a bit kind of hipster. They're a kind of like comedy. You can't do that thing of really comparing apples and pears when it comes to the Belgian League and the Scottish League. They're a bit kind of like, they've got a ground like Third Lanark's, the New Cathkin Park. So that's why we're not playing them in Brussels. We're playing them in Leuven. Can't hold European football, but it's a kind of a ground in a forest. They're a bit like Partick Thistle because they don't come from they're named after the St Giles district, but they're actually in the Forest district of Brussels, and they're much like Queen's Park in their glory days, where over a century ago, and they're just making a really interesting comeback, and they hadn't played in the top flight for like 50 years. And then they come back last season and they finished top of the Belgian league at the end of the regular season. They have this crazy playoff thing in Belgium where you half the number of points you've won during the season, then the top six play off and all that. So they were really unlucky to lose the league. But the thing is, they just buy cheap, and they've turned guys like absolute nobodies into Belgium internationals, and they're taking guys you've never heard of, and they're maybe the Livingston of Europe, if you like. That they hit in a counter attack, but they do it brutally well. They get players on the cheap. It's all part of this new thing. There's a lot of English teams with a lot of interest in Belgian clubs because of the Brexit. Is restricting the ability to get work permits for foreign players until they're maybe international standard.
Brighton are involved in them, aren't they? Brighton have
it's a Brighton owner, Tony Bloom, Stuart. He's pumped money into them, and they're trying to say they're separate, but I think they've already had a few loan deals, and I think they played Brighton in the summer. They played Brighton in the summer, drew 0-0. They played Sporting Club Portugal, drew with them, and they pumped Feyenoord 4-0. They're handy. They're pretty handy. They know what they're doing, but I think they've changed manager. And they've lost a few of their star players. They got the guys they've made into stars last season. Right. So this is their first foray into Europe for like half a century. So I'm hoping it's maybe a step too far for them just now, but it could go either way. It's dangerous.
Very quickly, Stuart, I mean, if Rangers get through this and then get to the playoff and indeed make the Champions League group stage, do you think that would represent sort of full recovery from 2012?
Oh, no, I think you're probably beyond that already. I think last season, us older, more mature people will look back in various sorties into Europe that Rangers have had and finals that they've reached and nearly reached and the likes. I think last season was such a... It was like somebody surfing on the biggest wave they could find. I don't think people will appreciate it and what Rangers achieved last season. I don't think they'll appreciate it for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years even, because it was the euphoria of actually big significant nights taking place at Ibrox again, and also the coverage and exposure that Rangers got last season was akin to, I would say, the first days of the Champions League and the games against Leeds United and everything that happened thereafter, and and reaching the UEFA Cup final under Walter. I think that in another couple of years we'll look back on what happened last season in the same way as we did about Manchester. I think it was that big, and I think anybody who tries to write Rangers off or belittle what they achieved last season and basically start talking about 2012 again. Listen, I think that bus has moved. Maybe not the train. That's a different matter in Scotland. But I think that bus has moved on.
And on that note, with that dig at Scott,
can I just say something very, very quickly here? Now I won't labour the point. A couple of weeks ago, I lost, as we all did, a guy we really, really admired, and I had the chance to call him a friend, and Andy Gorham. And sadly, I was away at the other end of the country with one or two, you might know one or two things that happened last week, and wasn't able to make it back up the road for the funeral, which is one of these things. But I have to say, he was one of the guys I get closest to at Rangers at a time when Rangers were box office, winning the treble, coming within a goal or a couple of points. He reached the Champions League final, and I think it was a measure of everything that Rangers did during that period of time, that you had Andy Goram between the sticks, and somebody who will forever evermore be recognised and known as the goalie. That just doesn't happen. If somebody's given that kind of label or that kind of tag, simply because of what they do every Saturday, that's a measure of just how good the guy was, and he'll be sorely missed.
Yeah, we will. Very hard to disagree with anything you said there, Stuart, and very heartfelt it was as well. And on that note, we'll call quits tonight. A big thanks to Eck and to Stuart for the contributions. Great stuff as always. We were live tonight on the Sunday, a bit late because of my leaky roof, but we were live tonight. The show will be available to download or stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all your usual places. We'll have a show out. I don't know if we've got anything planned for a preview for Tuesday night. I think it'll be next Friday before we're back on air, and obviously we'll be back next Sunday. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. That's the first game of the season out the road, guys. Until next time, bye for now.